Good afternoon. Welcome to the not regularly scheduled, but alternatively scheduled committee meeting for the Business Inspections, Housing and Zoning Committee for today, which is November 7th. I've been joined by council members Ellison, Osman, Chugtai, and Chavez, which is a quorum of the committee. I will note that Councilmember Rainville has some sort of stomach flu, and we encouraged him to stay home. And so that was probably pretty good. And I will need to leave about halfway through the meeting, and so the vice chair, Councilmember Osman, will chair from that point. But I'm known for moving quickly, so hopefully we'll be able to get through much of the business before that happens. I'm going to first move the consent agenda, which is items 5 through 13. This includes item number 5, which are the liquor license approvals, and 6, which are the renewals. Item 7 is a pretty big deal. This is the Business Technical Assistance Program, Cultural District's funding recommendations. And so while we're not going to discuss it, we're really happy with the volume of applicants and the number of projects we were able to get funded. Item 8 is the Minneapolis Homes Fund Financing Contingency Fund. Item 9 is accepting and approving funds for the acquisition of emergency shelter for persons experiencing homelessness. Item 10 is the carry forward of the year 2022 tax exempt housing revenue bonds. No one get any ideas. We have 400 million in requests, and we're carrying over to be able to more adequately distribute them. Item 11 is a number of items associated with the rezoning of the Upper Harbor Terminal. Item 12 is a liquor and beer licensing application change in procedure. This is being referred to staff. And item number 13 is setting a public hearing for November 29th with regard to electric assists for pedicabs. Are there any items anyone would like to pull off the consent agenda for discussion? Seeing none, I will move approval of the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. We'll then have public hearings 1 through 3, just so everyone knows what's going on. We'll then move into discussion items 14 and 15, and then take the quasi-judicial, number 4, and then discussion item 16. I know no one probably paid tons of attention to that. We're going to do the public hearings that are not Commercial Property Development Fund related, then the Commercial Property Development Fund items, then the quasi-judicial, followed by the rezoning. It does make sense to some of us. Thank you for your cooperation. We'll move to item number 1, which is a land sale at 1804 31st Street East. Mr. Ramadan, hi. God, we haven't seen you in forever. Thank you for being here today, sir.
Our first land sale, our only land sale that we have for today, is 1804 18th Street East. It's actually a side yard sale and split between 2 different residents. I left my notes. I'll make it very, very quick. This meets our city policies for our land disposition. Don't you love it when somebody backs you up?
Because there's 2 small lots, and
Yeah.
this is really small lots, and we're subdividing and giving each 2 the bigger lots.
And those are going to Matthew Stanek at 1806 31st Street East and David Baseckley at 1800 31st Street East for their appraised value of $3,000 totally, which is $1,500 each. On January 12th, 2011, the city acquired these from the Twin Cities Land Bank. The properties adjacent to these 2 parcels that I mentioned, both of them are substandard by today's city standards. So by this lot split, we actually get them a little bit closer to the size for a city standard lot. And as I mentioned, it's in accordance with the city's real estate disposition policy, which states that a buildable lot that is not served by an alley would necessitate construction of a house plan inconsistent with the architecture of the block and the neighborhood. Notification was provided to the Powderhorn Park neighborhood. I know that Matthew Stanek is here today. I haven't seen if David Baseckley is here yet, but Matthew Stanek is here today. Are there any questions of me?
Are there any questions for Mr. Ramadan on item number 1? Seeing none, thank you so much for being here and for your report. We'll open the public hearing on item number 1. I understand Mr. Stanek is here. If he'd like to speak, that would be great. No pressure, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. I just wanted to say a couple brief things. It looks like everyone's really busy today. You know, me and my partner Emily, who couldn't be here today, are really excited about the opportunity to actually have a yard for our house. This is our first house The yard is tiny, we have no alley. It would open the door for us to stay in the neighborhood for a really long time, which is really what we want to do. And it would open the door for us to really improve the lot, which since I've lived there has been empty and then had sort of a makeshift community garden in it, which we liked, and then was fenced off, which we don't really like, which is why we raised a fence and it came to this in the first place. And we'd love, there's no boulevard on the street. We'd love to plant trees. We'd love to just continue to see it be a better place to live for us and our neighbors and my neighbor David and everyone else on the block that, we love all our neighbors there. And I'm happy to be here and ask that this might happen. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stanek. Is anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Chavez.
I would be honored to move this.
Councilmember Chavez's honored motion is in front of us. Are there further comments or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved. Thank you for taking the time to come down today, Mr. Stanek. Happy you're going to stay in the city. We'll move on to item number 2, which is an interim use permit. Mr. Friends, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Goodman and committee members. Before you today is an application for an interim use permit to allow a temporary classroom building at 4530 Lindale Avenue South. This property is occupied by a charter school, Stonebridge World School. The temporary classroom building in question is already in place on the site. In 2019, an interim use permit was approved to allow the temporary classroom building for 3 years. That interim use permit has since expired, and they're seeking the application before you today to allow the temporary classroom buildings to remain until June 13th, 2024. The applicant has cited fluctuating enrollment and uncertainty in space needs in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic in choosing not to move forward with an addition to the school at this time. Since the classroom building has been in place since 2019, we have no record of any violation or complaints associated with the building, and we are recommending approval of the new interim use permit, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank
Are there
you.
any questions for Mr. Friends on item number 2? Seeing none, thank you for your report. This is a public hearing open on item number 2, which is an interim use permit for a site at 4530 Lindale Avenue South. You are here to speak to this.
I am.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you. My name is Barbara Novi. I'm the executive director of Stonebridge World School, and I'm here today to request that extension that he just discussed for interim permit to allow the 2 portable classrooms until June of 2024. Prior to COVID, we had received the initial permit, and our path was quite clear on how we wanted to expand the school, but that really was upended due to COVID-19 and the extreme impact that it had on our school as well as all schools over the last 2.5 years. Disruptions from COVID were significant, had a dramatic impact on our school, which included creating and implementing a distance learning model of instruction, which we had never done prior, integrating technology when over 80% of our students are free and reduced students and had no access to technology or no real experience with it. It included rapid changes to cleaning protocols, equipment, ventilation to the building, food protocols, just to name a few things. I could go on, the list is quite long. COVID impacted every area of the school operation, and most importantly, it impacted our students directly, and in some cases, students lost almost 2 years of learning. So we're in the process at this point in time of reevaluating our expansion plans. As he mentioned, fluctuating enrollment, there's lots of impacts for families because of COVID, moving, losing homes, all of that. So we need some more time to make the decision on whether we're going to move forward with this expansion. So we're requesting the extension to the interim permit until 2024.
Great, thank you for being here today, and thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Chugtai.
Happy to move this item.
This item has been moved for approval. Are there further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. Thank you for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Friends. We'll move then on to item number 3, which is the 2022 levy for special assessments. And we will have our annual report by Mr. Magrino. Welcome. Thank you for being here today, sir.
Good afternoon, Chair Goodman and committee members. Since Sorry about that. All right, we got it. Thank you. Sorry about that. My name is Nick Magrino. I'm from Regulatory Services. I'm here to present the annual levy for special assessments for inspections-related fees and fines. This is an annual process that we do where we have fees and fines for a few different departments, including Regulatory Services, the Health Department, and Community Planning and Economic Development. It's things like fees for nuisance abatement, vacant building registration, unpaid administrative citations, and we also have Tenant Remedy Act repairs and tenant relocation assistance. Throughout the year, we send notice of intent to assess letters to people who have these unpaid fees and fines, explaining the appeal process, their rights to make prepayments, go to an administrative hearing. They have the ability to prepay that by November 23rd, the day before Thanksgiving. And if that's not done, it's then added to their taxes payable in 2023. This year we did go back to having all of our hearings in person. We had 22 hearings over the course of the year. I have the total amount of the levy. It is about $2.7 million. That is up a bit from the past few years. Enforcement did slow down across the departments due to the pandemic, but things are kind of getting back to about where they had been in previous years. And so there's a breakdown of each individual assessment levy. Those are mostly payable in 1 year, and people get that on their tax statement in the spring. We'll also send out a reminder letter in the next few days here, reminding people of their right to prepay that without interest, and encouraging people to do that. And I'm happy to stand for any questions that the committee might have.
Okay, so let's see if there are any questions, because this is kind of a new item for a couple of council members, and they probably know about it, but just in case, are there any questions for Mr. Magrino? Seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing. I will note that there is a person who is here to speak, but we're not going to address his item independently, so we will direct him to you, but we will invite anyone who's here to be able to speak today. So thank you for your report. Stand by.
Thank you.
We'll open the public hearing on item number 3. I understand there is someone here to speak to this issue. You are welcome to come forward and state your name and address for the record. You have 2 minutes.
My name is Terrace Bedhaney. I live at 3430 Wilshire Place Northeast in Ward 1. I have spoken with Mr. Magrino about my particular nuisance abatement issue, so I am $400 of the $257,000 that is part of the levy. So I understand very small portion of what your guys are trying to do here. I missed the deadline to file the appeal. I submitted it, but stated it was past the deadline. Looked as far as the process that I could come here to discuss it before the council members, so I appreciate the time. I understand the issues before the court are large compared to this, but what I would like to just say is, given the process of nuisance abatement, the yard was too long. Some contractors came in while I was out on vacation, didn't have time to address the nuisance abatement. Front yard was cut, backyard wasn't, but they were there for about 10 minutes. My nuisance abatement was $418. It comes out to be about $2,500 an hour. So I don't know how that process works, and then seems excessive to me as far as the nuisance abatement. And then the fact is that those contractors then repeatedly visited my neighborhood after I had already done my part to make sure everything was under control. So it's, to me, I'm just speaking to kind of what feels like the unfairness of it. I understand that there's a process, but just wanted to bring it before the council and see if there's anything that can be done to address my situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. I'm going to move approval except for this young man's issue, which I'd like you to work out with Mr. Magrino in the hallway, please. We are not going to do a he said. We don't have any facts from staff in front of us, but I'm sure Mr. Magrino is willing to work with you. Are you willing to work with him? Okay. Sounds like he's going to work with you to address your issue, and so my motion would include whatever Mr. Magrino works out. Maybe it'll be something less than what is on the assessment rolls, and if you could update the assessment rolls, should you be able to compromise with him, great, and if you can't, you can fight it out in the hallway. How does that sound? Okay, good. Are there questions or comments about my suggested direction? Okay. So we are going to approve the recommendations from staff, directing Mr. Magrino to try to work something out with this nice young man who made it all the way down here today, and update the record accordingly after the fact, or update for the clerk as it goes forward to the council. Is that okay, Saray? All right, great. On the motion to approve, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? You know, when you're out there, you can give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We'll look out the window for you. Thank you for being here today. Hopefully we'll get some sort of compromise here. We are going to move on to items number 14 and 15. These are two commercial property development loans. These are substantial projects and loans. We've asked staff to do a presentation. We've asked the applicants to be here today. And we will start with Mr. Brisson on item number 14, which is a loan at 2518 North 2nd Street. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Jason Brisson. I am a program coordinator with CPED Business Development. Today I am presenting a request for a $700,000 commercial property development fund loan for 2518 North 2nd Street LLC to assist with the acquisition of 2518 2nd Street North. 2518 North 2nd Street LLC is 100% owned by Jesse Ross, who is also the owner of Mr. Jesse Ross LLC. Mr. Jesse Ross LLC provides diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting, executive coaching, and speaking services for a lot of well-known clients. Mr. Ross also founded the Racial Justice in Real Estate Group, founded in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. He's also very active in the community, in the school, and through his church as well. Mr. Ross plans to relocate his business. He's also going to create a community and event space and provide some affordable commercial space for local businesses in North Minneapolis. In terms of the structure of the project, Bell Bank is committed to providing a first mortgage at $2.615 million. The city is proposing to contribute a $700,000 commercial property development fund loan, the subject of this report here today, and a proposed $75,000 2% loan, and the owner is contributing $250,000 in equity. There's still a $500,000 funding gap for the project, and due to the timing, the city is proceeding with this report here today. To address that $500,000 gap, the applicant is working with MEDA on a potential bridge loan, and also the city has facilitated an introduction to the Groundbreak Coalition regarding seeking additional non-debt funding for the project. So staff is recommending approval of a $700,000 commercial property development fund loan to 2518 North 2nd Street LLC and Mr. Ross. That completes my presentation. I'm happy to stand for any questions, and the applicant, Mr. Ross, is also present to speak to the request if desired.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Are there any questions for staff? We'll start with that. Seeing none, Mr. Ross is here. You have a lot of friends, and they've all reached out to me over the weekend.
That's a great thing.
It's a great thing. I mean, it really felt good. Like, people really like you a lot. So why don't you and they believe in you. And I think that's a really, really powerful and emotional thing. So thank you for having people reach out to us. If you'd like to just talk a little bit about what you're doing, that would be great.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thank you for having me. I am a lifelong resident of North Minneapolis. I know I look young, but I'm a little older. My passion has been fueled by, one, the unrest, but also watching my mother, who worked at the Minneapolis Urban League and worked with Mayor Sharon Sells Belton, watching the city continue to see non-ownership from Black and brown folks. And so my hope is to be able to change that. I live less than a mile away from the building. I live right off Lowry and Sheridan, and I want to be able to provide an opportunity, not for just myself, but for other folks from North Minneapolis to be able to thrive and to build, grow, and scale their business. So I'm hoping that in the process of being able to acquire the funding, I will also be able to provide a space that entrepreneurs can come in, create a business incubator, but also to be able to bring people from other communities into North Minneapolis as much as possible.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for taking time to be here today. We
Thank you.
really appreciate it. Is there anyone else on your team who has an urge to say something? It's not a public hearing, so unless you have strong feelings, I would ask us to move approval really quickly. Are there any questions for staff? Okay, I'd like to take the time to call on Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions. Just really happy that this is coming forward. I think that Councilmember Goodman and I were talking not too long ago about, when we were first talking about creating this fund, we didn't know exactly what it would do. It was a new idea. And I just think that, to see Mr. Ross here today and many of the people who have gotten this access to the Commercial Property Development Fund, it's performing in exactly the way that we want. And I want to thank you for having ideas, for having the innovative and creative spirit to go ahead and do this. This loan is not making you, you're making you. But hopefully you know that your city is here to support you and to close that gap on who gets to own in our city and who gets to own North Minneapolis. It certainly should be people who live there. It should be people who are Black, are Hmong, are immigrant, POC, and Indigenous. We need that, and it's exciting to see cycle after cycle when these loans come forward, folks like yourself coming up and saying, I'm going to own a piece of my community. So thank you so much for all the work that you do. Thank you to staff for the work that you all do. It's a big deal. So, and with that, I'll move approval of this item.
Approval has been moved of item number 14, which is a $700,000 Commercial Property Development Fund loan to 2518 North 2nd Street. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That approves. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
We'll then move on to item number 15, which is a loan for the Technology and Innovation Center at 415 Royalston Avenue North. Mr. Hanson, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Eric Hansen. I'm the city's Economic Development Director. And before you is a report for an investment into housing, into jobs, into manufacturing, into innovation, and for the city to lead in these areas. What's before you is allocating $2 million of CPED General Fund out of the Commercial Property Development Fund to help assist the Business Technical Innovation Center at 415 Royalston Avenue, which is a modular housing manufacturing facility. This facility would manufacture, when it's up and running, potentially hundreds of housing units quicker than we see in the market today. The efficiencies in this facility could carve off 3/4 of a year in production to get more housing units into the region. It will create more than 300 jobs, and the important part of the jobs is how much people get paid. The lowest paying job in this facility will be $31 an hour. And to reflect on what that means, that is an annual income above an average median income of a family of 4 on the north side. So these are very impactful jobs next to a neighborhood that has high unemployment. It's manufacturing. The city of Minneapolis does not have a competitive advantage in the region for manufacturing. It's a 200,000 square foot manufacturing facility that will be located. So those who are looking for manufacturing jobs typically have to go outside of the city. This will keep them in Minneapolis in an existing building. Innovation around how this can get housing units out, how we can be more efficient, how we give construction workers the ability to work indoors year-round, and other efficiencies, and then the early support. So today, the $2 million would be a mark in the $19 million project, would help the North Group LLC, led by Devin George, secure some additional revenue bond financing, and then solicit funding from other philanthropic sources, Hennepin County, and potentially the state of Minnesota. Mr. George is going to put in about $2 million of equity into this project, and we believe that the city's support today will help him get this thing moving forward so that they can start to hire people in 2023 with full capacity and production by 2025. So I've got the entire Devin George team here, so I won't get into any more details because I'd like you guys to hear directly from Mr. George and his team. But with that, I can stop and ask if you have any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Hansen on this report? Seeing none, thank you so much for bringing this forward and for being here. Mr. George, let's just start first by saying if you're here for this item, raise your hand, just so we get a sense of it. So we're not going to let everyone speak, obviously, but we're very happy that you're here. But we're happy to give you a couple minutes to speak to what you're doing, and thank you for being here today, sir.
Well, thank you all for having me. Thank you for your continued support. As you guys know, I'm a professional retired NBA athlete, born and raised in North Minneapolis, and I got into development and really because I wanted to help my community. Every time I came home, every summer, it seemed like the neighborhood was getting worse. And my dad, we would do tours. I would go sign autographs, take pictures. My dad always told me, these are the people that raised you. These are the people that protected you. These are the people that nurtured you. These are the people that watched you when me and your mom were at work. And so now, looking back, what I do is I've turned my business and really to helping my community. These are now the same people that nurtured me to help me be successful. Now they're asking for jobs. Now they're asking for housing. So I wanted to build a business into really rebuilding our city, which I love and dear so much. I'm so proud of being from Minnesota, and I'm all over the world, but I'm proud there's no place like home, and now they need jobs and need homes. And so I can't turn my back on people that have looked out for me to help me and prop me up to be successful, to say, now I'm good. Now you need housing, oh well, figure it out. No, I've built my business into helping my community. And the other thing is really, the one thing that I will say that I'm good at is building a team. I have a team mentality. I played professional sports and won championships, so I understand role playing. I understand that you need to get people that do this, and I have the best experts throughout it. And so we're all here based on the question. That person may come up and address it or speak because I don't want to overstep and say something that I don't know or understand. And then the other thing too is we're building we've had a great meeting. I'm not sure if he's here today, but Dan McConnell, we had a great meeting.
He's here.
He's here. We had a great meeting with all of our trades today, and we have a great plan of really how we're working together. We need each other. There's relationships and things that we bring to the table, and there's things that they're doing that bring to the table. So we really are going to fine-tune this and get this together with our trades unions, and so it's going to be a great project. But I'll leave it at that.
Do you have someone else you'd like to speak, sir?
Yeah, I would like Bill to say a couple words.
Mr. English, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I brought this document to you to show you. This is dated December 12th, 2019. This is when the journey for creating modular housing started for this old man. A research project was done by the Carlson School of Management on how we could create living wage jobs in an urban marginalized community. And so since that time, I have been battling and lobbying our 45-member nonprofit public sector and other members of the North Job Creation Team. We brag about bringing in 1,000 living wage jobs already to North Minneapolis, and we believe these 333 jobs will be a game changer, and will have such a huge economic impact on growing our families and allowing them to own the homes that they would help build. The training is in place. We've built relationships with the trades, as been stated earlier. The community is fully behind it. We could have packed this room today, but we chose not to. We don't want to do anything other than say, we've been a partner with this. We want to partner with the city. The CPAD has been more than helpful to us in every aspect. I couldn't ask for a better partner than we've gotten out of CPED. So I want to thank the committee for hearing from us, and all I ask you to do is take this journey with us. I guarantee you, you will be proud of the outcome. God bless you all.
Thank you, Mr. English. Is there anyone else you'd like to speak, Mr. George? Okay, sounds good. So, Mr. Hanson, I know many of us have had a briefing about the project, so we're very familiar, but maybe you could just highlight the details.
Yep.
Right?
So this is an existing building. They'll move into it, hopefully starting this next summer when they get their financing. The jobs will start being, they'll start recruiting end of next year. It'll take about 2 years to get them all fully staffed and then fitted out for the facility. The aggregate salaries are going to be close to $6 million. We're expecting that that will have a multiplier effect in the community. So to what Mr. English was saying about being able to afford housing, but also to support the small businesses in the area, we see there are 2 current sites that can accept these. So there's a market in place with Mr. George's other developments, one in Brooklyn Park and then the Upper Harbor Terminal, which you know very much about. We are excited about the relationship with the trade unions, and we're going to continue to see where we can be more, have stronger partnership with the trade union. So I thank Mr. McConnell for being here. Other than that,
Total project cost?
$19 million. Sorry if I didn't tell that.
Thank you. Okay, are there other questions for Mr. Hanson? Seeing none, I'm going to call on my colleague, Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you again. It's really exciting to have these 2 big projects coming through. I know that this is a huge project, and I want to thank Devin George. I want to thank Bill English, and I know that he might be younger than he looks, but Bill's been doing this a long time, and to have the briefings that we had early on, Mr. English, and to see, I know that, Devin, your leadership is at the center of this, but I know it doesn't surprise you to know that Bill English's credibility and his gravitas brings a lot to this as well. And, folks on the north side will say, hey, we've had promises made before about job creation, about this, about that. And I think what feels different about the team that you've assembled here is you've got people who are north side residents, not only just grew up there, but live there now. You've got folks who have created jobs on the north side as a part of this team. And so to me, the credibility is high. You've built buildings before. And so we know that you know how to get that done. And I know that we talk about, a lot about, things like the housing continuum but this is also a big part of our economic development continuum, right? How we get people in at a certain level, employed and growing their careers. And I'm pretty confident that can start to happen here. And so even though we've got a 2-year clock to go ahead and get this thing done, that starts today, and I'm really excited to see this project come to fruition. I'm excited to see Northside residents employed here, and I'm happy to move approval of this item. And I hope more people in the community can understand what this project is. And I'm excited for the partnership with the trades. We know that Northside residents need, all the things that come with the power of collective bargaining and all that stuff. To know that you guys are at the table and in discussion, and this project means a lot to me. So thank you, Mr. McConnell. That's all I've got to say. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
On Councilmember Ellison's motion to approve of the staff recommendation, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. Thank you all for being here for this today. We'll move on to item number 4, which is variances and a site plan review for properties at 613 and 623 Van Buren Street Northeast. Mr. Friends, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Goodman and committee members. I'm Andrew Friends. I'm a planner with CPED. Before you today is an appeal of the City Planning Commission's approval of 2 variances and site plan review to allow the construction of a new 6-story 64-unit residential building at 613 and 623 Van Buren Street Northeast. This project site consists of 2 parcels located on Van Buren Street, between Van Buren and Central Avenue, north of Spring Street Northeast. The property is currently occupied by a single-family dwelling on the 613 parcel and a public alley on the 623 parcel. The alley on this site is somewhat unique in that it is established by easement and is not dedicated public right-of-way. This property is a through lot with street frontage on Van Buren, Central, and Spring Street Northeast, and has access both to the alley that runs through the site as well as the connected north-south alley on the block. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 6-story residential building containing 64 units at the property. This building would include 1 level of underground parking accessed off of the alley. Long-term bike parking is provided in a bike room at the first floor, with short-term bike parking provided adjacent to both Van Buren Street Northeast and Central Avenue. The building lobby would be located on Van Buren at the southern end of the building, with walk-up units moving north on Van Buren, and the project would be subject to inclusionary zoning. A total of 4 public hearing land use applications have been submitted for the project. Oh, this is the wrong file. That's okay. The first is a rezoning from the R1A district to the R3 district, retaining the Corridor 6 built form overlay district. Regulations pertaining to built form, so maximum and minimum height and floor area ratio, maximum impervious surface coverage, and similar metrics are regulated by the built form overlay district, which in this case is Corridor 6, and permitted uses are regulated by the primary zoning district. In this case, the rezoning is required for the project as the R1A district limits the maximum number of units in an individual structure to 3. So this property has the future land use designation of neighborhood mixed use and is located in the Corridor 6 built form district. The existing R1A zoning is not congruent with the applicable future land use and built form guidance for the site in the comprehensive plan. The R3 district, as sought by the applicant, is the lowest intensity zoning district that allows 4 or more units in an individual structure. That rezoning is before you as a separate agenda item today, number 16, as it is a legislative action and not subject to appeal. The public hearing on the rezoning was held by the Planning Commission, and they did recommend approval. The project is also seeking 2 setback variances. This property is a through lot, as I mentioned before, with required front yards adjacent to both Van Buren Street and Central Avenue. The applicable district minimum setback here, adjacent to both streets, is 15 feet, but adjacent to Van Buren, the property is subject to an increased front yard setback of 28.9 feet in depth, due to the adjacent home to the north. The applicant is seeking variances to reduce both of these front yards from 28.9 feet to 15 feet adjacent to Van Buren and from 15 feet to 5.3 feet adjacent to Central. I'm happy to provide additional detail related to any of the required findings as listed in the staff report if there are any questions, but I did want to touch briefly on the first variance finding, which is that practical difficulties exist in complying with the ordinance due to circumstances unique to the property, and that those circumstances were not created by the applicant and are not economic alone. This property has several unique conditions which together constitute a strong practical difficulty. This property is a uniquely shaped 5-sided lot, which is generally triangular in shape and varies significantly in depth from approximately 130 feet deep at the north end to approximately 32 feet deep at the south end. The property is also a through lot, which is subject to 2 required front yards, one of which is increased to the established front yard of almost twice the regular district minimum setback. And in addition to that, the northern 20 feet of the property is subject to the alley easement. In total, 62.6% of the property is subject to required yards or the alley easement. This compares with a typical rectangular lot of the same size, would only be subject to setbacks occupying 35.6% of the lot. So these conditions are unique to the property, do significantly restrict the development options for the site, were not created by the applicant, and are not economic alone. The applicant is also seeking site plan review. On October 17th, following a public hearing, the Planning Commission acted to approve both variances and the site plan review application, subject to conditions as recommended by staff. Staff is recommending that the committee uphold the Planning Commission's action and deny the appeal, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Friends with regard to his report? I thought it was very thorough, thank you. The packet is also quite thorough. Any questions for staff? Okay, thank you very much. Seeing none, this is a public hearing on 3 items, which are approving 2 variances as well as the site plan review. This is being appealed by Sarah Walbridge Jones, and I would guess that she also has counsel here. My plan is to allow the appellant to present for 10 minutes, and then there's a list of 10 people who are set up to testify, and they'll each have the opportunity to speak for 2 minutes. I'm going to, before we begin your time, however, ask Mr. Fussy if he could give us some direction with regard to conversations happening in the community surrounding the city's ability to uphold the plans within our 2040 plan itself. There's been some concern that there's been litigation, we're not allowed to move forward with our plan, and I would like you to clarify that first. And so, just in case there were any questions like that, why don't we start there? Mr. Fussy, please.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. That is correct. My office has reviewed this matter in terms of any assertion that the now pending litigation which challenges the adoption of the city's 2040 comprehensive plan would have what, if any, effect it could have on an appeal like this. The litigators in that case, and as well as my office, have examined that, and it's crystal clear that a full stay was imposed on the judge's order in that matter, and it is of no effect, and essentially the 2040 litigation does not play any role on the council's determination of this matter at this juncture, and your consideration should focus on the applications in front of you, and in particular, the variance applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fussy. Are there any questions from members of the committee on Mr. Fussy's comments? Seeing none, I'm also going to then turn the chair over to Councilmember Osman because I'll have to leave and I don't want to interrupt the process, but I will invite Ms. Walbridge Jones or her counsel to come up for a 10-minute period to use it however you'd like, ma'am.
Chair Goodman, do you mind if I pass out some exhibits to y'all before I start?
Do you want everyone to listen to you or to read packets?
Well, I'd like you to have in front of them.
I'd wait until after you commented, otherwise everyone will just look at that and no one will listen to you.
Okay, well, I have it highlighted, so is it okay if you guys don't know? Chair Goodman, council members, council, my name is Brianna Bergstrom. I'm an attorney at Taft, Setnius, and Hollister, here today on behalf of Ms. Sarah Walbridge Jones. I want to go in depth a little bit about the 3 fatal problems that are outlined in the appeal statement that was submitted. And the first one actually leaves off with what Mr. Fussy was talking about. Contrary to what he said, the approval of this project, the Planning Commission's approval and the anticipated City Council approval is a direct violation of Judge Klein's June 15th, 2022 order. Now, what does that order say? Let's walk through it. If you turn to the page 3, and I've highlighted all of this for you for ease of review, it says, plaintiffs began this action seeking a declaration that plaintiffs have made a sufficient prima facie showing under the Minnesota Environmental Rights Act, MIRA, that the 2040 plan is likely to cause the pollution, impairment, or destruction of the air, water, land, or other natural resources located within the state, and that the city had no affirmative defenses. So first is a declaration that the 2040 plan itself violates MIRA. Second, plaintiffs also sought to enjoin the city's approval of the 2040 plan under the city until the city offered a rebuttal or affirmative defense, quote, presumably through a voluntary environmental review. So in other words, its challenge is to the 2040 plan itself. And they're challenging it under MIRA, saying that the city's 2040 plan is a violation of MIRA. in other words, unlawful. And you might be asking, well, how does this fit in here? Well, if you turn to page 4, towards the bottom, Judge Klein expressly stated, one potential but expected outcome of the 2040 plan is increased urban population density. It is the increase in population density that is central to plaintiffs' contentions of adverse or potential adverse environmental impacts. Increased population density is an affirmative feature of the 2040 plan that has not been present in any previous comprehensive city plan. And we would submit to you that this Van Buren proposed project is a prime example of this by maxing out the potential build-out at this lot. Now, after Judge Klein goes through his analysis, I point you to page 21 where he makes a finding. He states, this court finds plaintiff has satisfied its burden to make a prima facie showing required by Minnesota Statute 116B.04 little b, which is MIRA. So in other words, the smart growth plaintiffs have shown that the 2040 plan violates MIRA and therefore is unlawful. Go on to page 23. Judge Klein wrote, the court finds that the city has not satisfied its burden to rebut plaintiff's prima facie showing of environmental harm. And he goes on to explain a bit more in detail about this. In evaluating the city's failure to satisfy its obligation under MIRA, a further brief discussion is required. The city has not, as required under MIRA, either rebutted or affirmatively defended against smart growth's prima facie showing, and this appears to be due largely to tactical decisions made by the city during the course of litigation. And on to page 25, Judge Klein writes, the city's discovery responses further acknowledged that it never conducted any environmental review of the 2040 plan. The record is similarly devoid of any indication that the city conducted discovery for the purpose of developing rebuttable evidence or an affirmative defense. He concludes by saying this unfortunate strategy has left the city bereft of any fact-based rebuttal or affirmative defense, the type of which is called for under MIRA. So Judge Klein went on page 26 then, after finding the declaratory judgment in favor of plaintiffs, then on to the injunction aspect. The relief requested by plaintiff is that the city be enjoined from any ongoing implementation of the 2040 plan, and that the city be required to revert back to the 2030 plan for its prospective enforcement of both residential development and land use ordinances. So therefore, it is undisputed that the Planning Commission's approval of this project and anticipated City Council's approval is a direct violation of this order. This order found that the 2040 plan is a violation of MIRA. So therefore, approving of anything that would be pursuant to the 2040 plan, just like this project, is a violation of MIRA. Now going on to the second fatal problem is Judge Klein's July 26th stay order. Now, the Planning Commission's approval of this project inexplicably ignores the express risk to the city in Judge Klein's order. And I would direct you to page 4. Judge Klein writes, the city has already been enjoined from enforcing the 2040 plan and has further been ordered to revert back to the 2030 plan by August 15th, 2022. If this court does not stay enforcement of the June 15th, 2022 order, the city argues that it will have to invest considerable time and effort into re-implementing the 2030 plan, including updating ordinances to comply with changes in the law, only to then invest considerable time and effort into undoing that revision and re-implementing the 2040 plan, should the order be reversed. The court accepts this as a plausible risk of serious harm and finds that a stay will alleviate the risk of such harm while the appeal is pending. Plaintiffs similarly argue that if the order is stayed and ultimately upheld on appeal, then any permits that are granted, any work that has been done under the 2040 plan, might ultimately need to be undone, requiring duplicate expenditures by the city and no small cost to developers. Quite plainly, there is risk to the city under both scenarios. So along these lines, the smart growth plaintiffs have already put the city on notice that if the June 15th, 2022 order is upheld, that they will immediately be moving Judge Klein to enforce its order. And the smart growth plaintiffs are confident that the appeal will be upheld, which that decision comes out on or before January 11th, 2023. not only because of the comments that were made during the oral argument that was held on October 13th, which I've provided you a transcript and highlighted many of the encouraging comments, if you will, by the justices, but also the Star Tribune's articles, comments, which I also provided you a copy of with. They said in there, during oral arguments on Thursday, Judges Kevin Ross, Michelle Larkin, and Jeffrey Bryan questioned Perry and Assistant City Attorney Ivan Ledber, hinting at how they leaned in this case. Goes on to say, Judge Larkin said she was having a hard time seeing how the district court erred when the Supreme Court already has accepted the presumption of a full build-out of the 2040 plan as an acceptable metric by which to measure environmental harm. And now for these reasons and this expressed risk, that's why we set forth 3 different protections in our appeal statement that the city could adopt to protect itself from this risk. The first is to delay any final decision on this project until January 18th, 2023, which is the end of city's 120-day statutory period to make a decision on this project. The second one is to conditionally approve of it, which is something that city commonly does in situations like this. For example, it could, if it wanted to approve of it, condition that approval on the appeal being found in favor of the city. Or it could expressly warn the developers in writing of this express risk, that if it goes forward with this project, there is a serious risk that it may need to be taken down at Judge Klein's order. And now the third fatal problem has to do with the variance criteria in this case is simply not met. Now the developer and the city have to meet all 3 variance criteria to move forward with this project. First, starting with the practical difficulty standards, the only reason there's any purported practical difficulties here is because they're attempting to put a 64-unit dwelling complex into a lot that is zoned to have a 3-unit max. That is what has created the practical difficulties. In the second sentence, the last sentence under this finding, these circumstances were not created by the applicant and are not economic alone, is not only conclusory, but it's not supported by any factual basis. And in the presentation we just heard, we also didn't hear any additional factual basis or reasoning for how this is not economic alone. And even looking past this first factor, as we know there are 5 areas around this property that may purport to make practical difficulties. Even looking beyond that, you don't meet the second or third element. The second is that the property owner or authorized applicant proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner that will be keeping with the spirit and intent of the ordinance and the comprehensive plan. First, this is not reasonable. Both of the variances, the first asks to go from 28.9 feet to 15 feet, less than half almost, and the second variance 15 feet to 5.3, almost 2/3 of where it's supposed to be. There's no case that says that is reasonable. May I briefly continue? Sure. So it's not in keeping with the intent. It says create orderly development, protect residential character, and ensure light to access. This is not orderly development when you're attempting to have a 64-unit dwelling with only 20 parking spaces below. And this is not keeping with the residential character of the neighborhood. I would direct you to the picture that we have included in our packet. It is not the same as what the neighborhood protects. So for those reasons, we ask that you deny the Planning Commission's approval and do not approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Walbridge Jones. And before I open to the public hearing, I will give the project applicant an opportunity to present their case. Is there a representative here today? Thank you, ma'am. You have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Carol Lansing. I'm an attorney at Faegre, Drinker, Biddle, and Reith, and I'm representing the applicant. I will not be addressing the merits or status of the court case. As the city attorney has told you, it's not relevant to this matter. The 2040 plan and ordinances that are in place now are the policy and law that must be applied here. On the rezoning, The staff report has explained how it is consistent with the 2040 plan for a site that's guided Corridor 6, neighborhood mixed use, and on a goods and services corridor. I will point out that while the street address may be Van Buren, Central is a commercial and transit corridor, and there's lots of policies in the 2040 plan that support density on that, in that type of location. Earlier this year, the City Council approved rezoning to R3 for another lot on this same block, and there's no legal basis, reasonable basis to deny the same rezoning request on this lot. With respect to the yard variances, which are the issue in today, the appeal repeatedly argues that height and density of the project are unreasonable, out of character with the block, and injurious to the use of other property. These objections to height, density, and traffic generation are not relevant because they do not relate to the yard variances that are an issue. No variances or other approvals are required for the height or density which are allowed. The appeal also argues that the variances are unreasonable for a lot that's guided for 3 units or an interior 3 lot. This is not an interior 3 lot. It is already built form Corridor 6, and reasonableness should be judged in the context of a Corridor 6 lot. There is a concern raised about shadowing, and the house to the north will be shadowed in the middle of the day. I'm not sure. Can you see this? Well, there is a shadow study in your package while they bring this up, and it does show you that in the middle of the day in winter, there will be shadows on the house to the north, and that's this. It went away. Morning and afternoon, it's not shadowed. I would say that in an urban neighborhood environment, to have a house next door that's shadowed in the middle of winter is not an unusual situation. The shadows have been mitigated in this circumstance because the new building will be 33 feet south of the property line and even further from the house itself. And the shadows are not relevant to the setback variances. I know these are small and hard to see, but this is a comparison on the top of the shadows that are cast by the building at the proposed setbacks, and on the bottom, it's the shadows that would be cast if there were no setback variances. And when it's shadowed in the middle of winter, you see the shadowing extends, slightly in front of the house, and as proposed, and if there were no setback variance, it is still just in line in the middle of the day with the front of the house. So the shadowing effects on the house are really no different if it complied with those variances. So it is not, the setback variances are not injurious to the use and enjoyment of that property or the ability to have solar panels. It's unquestioned, as Andrew pointed out, that there are practical difficulties in meeting the setbacks on this unusual lot, and he described those in detail, so I won't go through those again. But I do want to address the character of the block. This exhibit shows the proposed building, and these are the existing setbacks of the other houses on the block and estimates of their front yard setback. The approximately 29-foot setback of the house to the north is the greatest setback of any building on this lot. Most of, the rest of the setbacks, several of them are 15 feet or less. And so this proposed 15-foot setback will not be out of character with the existing conditions or out of character with how this Corridor 6 lot is guided. So in conclusion, I would like you to deny the appeal, request that you deny the appeal and approve all of the applications. And I also we do object to any delay. Delay in this case would be pointless and would be prejudicial to my client. So the architect and the applicant are here if you have any other questions.
Thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you.
I'll now open to the other members to speak. Who would like to speak? You'll have 2 minutes. I have a list here, and I apologize if I mispronounce your last name. Conrad.
That's good enough.
I'm just gonna leave it there. You have 2 minutes, sir. Thank you.
All right, so I know Chair Goodman isn't here anymore, but Vice Chair Osman, thank you for being here, and committee members. My name is Conrad Zibikowski, and I live in Ward 3. Of course, we are in a quasi-judicial hearing on 613 Van Buren, and we can only look, as the city attorney staff member said, we can only look at the comprehensive plan law that was adopted by council. And actually, as it so happens, as Commissioner and Committee Member Rainville said at the Planning Commission meeting on October 17th, they, the developers, are only doing what the law allows them to do. So, under the consensus Minneapolis 2040 comprehensive plan, that includes higher density along the busy Central Avenue Northeast corridor that I know many of you go to restaurants, go to places along there, that this lot is directly on. It directly is on Central Avenue Northeast. So I only have 2 minutes, so I want to make my most important point very clearly. Housing is a human right. Council took bold action to legalize housing across Minneapolis. Many of you took that vote. I know Councilmember Ellison took that vote. This neighbor's appeal is a direct attack on the idea that everybody is welcome in our city, and that is a direct attack against the council's action on that issue. I urge you to deny this appeal and to support and defend council's consensus Minneapolis 2040 comprehensive plan as originally adopted, and the fundamental right of all residents to safe, affordable, and stable housing. Thank you.
And next, I'll have Alex.
Yeah, use this.
Long last.
Hi, Vice Chair Osman and members of the committee. My name is Alex Schieferdecker. I live at 1369 Spruce Place. The applicant's primary argument is that the City Planning Commission should have not evaluated this project under the existing land use rules as determined by the 2040 plan, but instead should have reviewed the project under different land use rules, and they just assume that that would have disallowed it. I want to remind the committee that the previous Minneapolis Comprehensive Plan, the Minneapolis Plan for Sustainable Growth, is not the development roadblock that the appellant implies. I think it's pretty clear that this project and its rezoning would have been permitted under that regime as well. If you look at the future land use map of the plan, it explicitly differentiates the 613 Van Buren property from the rest of the block and identifies it as a parcel appropriate for medium density mixed use. The street directly outside of this property is now planned for a station on the Metro F line ABRT, suggesting that even higher densities are warranted from when the plan was first created. In a section directly pertaining to station areas, the 2019 Comprehensive Plan says to concentrate highest densities adjacent to the transit station. In the section on the environment, the 2019 Comprehensive Plan says to support transit-oriented development and encourage development projects that maximize the development capacity of the site. Supported by these policies of the 2009 Comprehensive Plan, the city established and repeatedly reinforced a precedent of approving development of the same scale as the project at issue here and on sites that had the exact same future land use designation as this one. A great example of this can be found nearby in Northeast in the area along Broadway and Marshall, which has been built up to 6 stories of density and has never been slated for ABRT level of service. I go through all this not to usurp the role of CPED staff, but just to point out that the policies that underpin the approval of 613 Van Buren are not unique to the Minneapolis 2040 plan, and they do not disappear if the plan is assumed away. These policies are long-standing pillars of the city's land use policy, and the committee should feel confident in the judgment of both current and past planners and planning commissions in supporting this development and others like it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. And now I will call Chris Drops.
Yeah, you got it. Hi guys, how are you? You had some awesome presentations today where developers worked with the community to meet the needs of the community and what they wanted. So I'm the neighbor directly to the north. Okay, this is what the neighborhood wants to a person. is appropriate, affordable housing for our street. 4 units, if you're gonna give them that much space, is not enough affordable housing. So when Conrad gets up here and talks about how this is like a front to affordable housing, trying to
Address the committee, not
Thank you. No, they were addressing us, so we will address them as well. Alex, that was not from the 2019 plan. That was from the neighborhood small area plan. Okay, so if people are gonna bring up here and tell incorrect things, okay, there was literally pictures of townhomes for that corner lot, 3-story townhomes. So he presented an incorrect fact as fact here. That was the St. Anthony East neighborhood small area plan drawing, okay? At the end of the day, this is what I want. I want access to my roof. I have the right to put solar. I have told my child we are going to put solar on our roof and we are going to charge our car. And that's how he's going to learn how to make this world last longer. Okay? So to say that it does not have a negative effect on me is completely wrong. And I believe that their shadow study is incorrect because I've done my own and it does not look like it. It looks like we will be in significant shadows from September to about March. Okay? So if we're going to call this quasi-judicial, let's get a third party in here to get us some actual facts, okay? Not all these presentations. I mean, there's articles out here where people want missing middle housing. That's what our neighborhood wants. Missing middle, affordable housing, not 4 units.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. And now I will call John McFader. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is John McFadden. I live directly across the street. And one of the policies outlined in 2040 is that it should fit into the character of the neighborhood. Moving forward to the north on Central, you have no housing at all until there is nothing really all the way to Columbia Heights on that side of the street. And that would say that we would like to have housing that looks like something that should belong in a neighborhood, not a monolithic structure at the corner where nobody can turn out of and into now from Central Avenue. This is an expressly grave problem to public safety, and it isn't in keeping at all with anything having to do with a house or a home or a duplex or a triplex or a sixplex that has character of the neighborhood. This is nothing. And that setback that you saw, that's ridiculous. You won't be able to look down the street and see anything. It does away with trees. It does away with anything. The footprint takes up every square inch of that lot. And there leaves no green space there, leaves nothing. And it doesn't look at all like anything else in the neighborhood. And it's going to be personally injurious to me because I know you can't take parking into consideration, which is absolutely asinine, but that's the way it is. It will hurt me as a landlord owning the house across the street as a landlord since 1989. I won't have anywhere for my tenants to park. It'll personally impact me being able to get tenants into my home. Let's build something that's dense, that's in keeping with the neighborhood and in keeping with 2040. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now I will call Jim Holmquist.
Hello, Jim Holmquist, 622 Van Buren Street and 620 Van Buren Street Northeast. I've seen the neighborhood grow from primarily a blue-collar, older community into more of a diversified and younger family-oriented neighborhood. It's become safer and more vibrant in the last 20 years that I've owned the property. I'm here in support of my neighbors and Sarah's petition. I'm in strong opposition to the proposed 613 Van Buren Street project. I support the right size development for the continued growth of the community that will not negatively impact the neighbors and the essential character of the neighborhood as a whole. I request you recognize the crisis facing my neighborhood. I strongly urge you to fulfill your sacred duty as city planners and use your significant powers to reject any variances and projects outright. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And next will be Lonnie Sternberg.
Hello, my name is Lonnie Sternberg, and I live at 733 Van Buren Street Northeast, and I am here in support of Sarah's appeal to deny the site plan for 613 Van Buren. I just want everyone to know that there was a lot of thought put into the 2040 plan, and one of the benefits that was being promoted was that there was going to be a decrease in variance requests and also those approvals by those elected city officials. Sadly, we're seeing the community members time and time again that developers are requesting these variances and they're being rubber stamped, and that's truly what everybody is seeing, approving all these variances. 613 is a prime example. 50% of the houses on Van Buren have a setback of 30 feet, so there's a discrepancy in, what other people are saying. 30% of the houses have a setback of at least 20 feet or more. And what I'm not understanding is why are these variances being approved when it clearly doesn't coincide with the neighborhood? That was something very important in the 2040 plan. The purpose of the city council is to really represent the people of the neighborhood, the people who live on the street, not in different neighborhoods, South Minneapolis, North Minneapolis, and unfortunately the members aren't being heard, and we're the ones who are being impacted. I am asking you to, do your duty and support the appeal of Sarah, and ask for a new site plan that fits within the ordinances that fit within the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last person on the list is Moon. All I have is first name Moon. Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Is it all right if I speak? I am Sarah Walbridge-Jones.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
You have 2 minutes.
Okay. I think what's baffling me so much is that I think we're actually all on the same page. We do want affordable housing. We do agree that housing is needed. I don't want to take that away from anyone. I absolutely agree with that. There's 100, as you know, there's 100 comprehensive plan policies under the 2040 plan. And the 2040 plan pursues both substantial and incremental density increases, okay? We know that. And the strategy to implement those are your built forms and your zoning, okay? And so we keep coming up here trying to talk about the zoning piece or talk about the built form. And slowly, we can't all show up at 1:30 but we're all here. The Van Buren residents, and it's not all homeowners. I mean, there's renters sending you emails. There are landlords coming up and testifying. There are homeowners that are testifying. And it's because we want you to keep taking action in correcting the built form district for the odd side. So the odd side only of Van Buren is quarter 6, but the even side. So Jim, who I look at his house right across from mine, he's interior 3. That's just such an incredible misbalance. And Van Buren is met for missing middle, and we really would embrace missing middle. And I think the crappy thing that's happened is we don't have any developers that want to work with us, right? And I understand I'm not your constituent. I get that. But I do live and work in this neighborhood, and I see what would benefit both current and future neighbors. Interior 3 would create more opportunities for low, moderate income development and for people who prefer larger apartments. You didn't want to interfere with 635, and I want to tell you on behalf of the neighbors whose garage was blocked by that project, they had to spend $10,000 just to get a recorded easement. And here I am spending money just to get you to hear me, because I had to hire a lawyer too. So here's my ask. Could you consider what if? That's it. What if you considered what if? What if Van Buren was meant to be Interior 3? And what if you voted right now to rectify that, to come back to the table with a different development for 613? Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I don't have anyone else on the list. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Well, thank you so much all for coming out and really making your voice heard. Before I call Councilmember Allison to make a motion, is there any of my colleagues have any question with the staff or the city attorney? Councilmember Allison.
Thank you, Vice Chair Osman. We have had a lot of really great presentations today, but I also want to remind myself and my colleagues that we're here just deciding whether we've gotten it wrong here, whether our staff got it wrong, whether there are things that we can't consider while we're making this motion. I did want to ask Mr. Fussy, just for a quick reminder of the timeline. There was the lawsuit, there was the stay, and now we're no longer under a stay. Is that correct? Of enforcing 2040.
Well, Mr. Chair and committee members, Councilmember Ellison, the stay is still in effect, meaning that the district court order, which essentially overturned 2040, is not in place. What is in place directly is Minneapolis 2040, and that its principles and its standards are what must govern your consideration of this.
Thank you. And even in the own supplement that we got handed earlier today, it says, it quotes Judge Klein, and it says, he made a statement when he allowed the city to keep approving development under 2040 pending appeal in order to prevent chaos. So, the thing that we have to consider is whether or not we're allowing 2040 to continue or not. And there's nothing that we've been told today that is suggesting that we should not allow 2040 to continue. So I'm going to move to deny the appeal, to uphold the Planning Commission's decision and staff's recommendation. I'm sure a lot of folks at the court level will have a lot more conversations, but that's the decision before this council today. So that's my motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Allison. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll for Councilmember Allison's motion.
Councilmember Ellison.
Aye.
Councilmember Chavez.
Aye.
Councilmember Chugtai.
Aye.
Chair Osman.
Aye.
There are 4 ayes.
And that motion passes. All right. Okay, the next item. What's the next item? Yes. Next item, rezoning for Deep Housing LLC, and I will call staff Andrew Franz to present that.
Vice Chair Osman, members of the committee, this item is the rezoning associated with the same project as the appeal that we just discussed. It's a rezoning of the primary zoning district for the 2 sites from R1A to R3, retaining the existing built form overlay district of Corridor 6. So it's really the same considerations that we talked about earlier. The Planning Commission recommended approval based on staff findings. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there a question for the staff? All right. Well, with that, I will move the item for approval. All those favoring say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed say nay. And that motion carries. See no further business before us. With no objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.